If you think money can buy luxury but not justice, think again. What started as a humiliating moment on a flight turned into one of the biggest corporate meltdowns in airline history, all because a father with unimaginable power decided that no one, absolutely no one, could insult his daughter and get away with it. This is not just a story about a rude flight attendant. This is about arrogance colliding with influence, about racism caught on camera, and about how 5 minutes of cruelty cost an airline over $800 million. If you're listening from the United States, the United Kingdom, or anywhere in the world where power struggles between ordinary people and the elite fascinate you, hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to hear is more than a story. It's a modern-day thunderstorm of humiliation, revenge, and shocking twists that will leave you breathless. Asterisk, the flight was supposed to be simple, a direct journey across the Atlantic that carried businessmen, students, and families heading home or on holiday. Among them was Amara Caldwell, a young woman whose quiet demeanor and modest style disguised the fact that she was the daughter of Richard Caldwell, one of America's most powerful millionaires. Amara had just returned from a volunteer mission in Africa, where she had spent weeks building schools and distributing books to children who had never seen a classroom before. Tired but content, she slipped into her business class seat with little more than a backpack, a book, and her phone. To her, this was just another flight. But to Claire, a senior flight attendant with a hardened face and a reputation for arrogance, Amara's very presence seemed to trigger contempt. It began subtly ignoring her request for water, brushing past her row without offering so much as a smile, then rolling her eyes when Amara politely asked about the nearest restroom. Passengers noticed but said nothing, some lowering their heads into laptops, others burying themselves in headphones. Then came the meal service. Claire skipped Amara's row entirely. When Amara raised her hand gently, saying, "Excuse me, I think you missed me," Claire turned sharply and, with a voice sharp enough for half the cabin to hear, snapped, "Maybe. In your country meals are handed out for free, but here we follow the rules." A hush fell. Eyes widened. Phones tilted up to record. Amara tried to stay calm. She explained she had paid just like everyone else. But the very sound of her voice seemed to anger Claire further. "You people always think you're owed something," she muttered under her breath, just loud enough to sting. The businessman next to Amara frowned. A woman across the aisle gasped. And before anyone could process what was happening, Claire shoved aside the tray, leaned in, and with a sudden motion that horrified every witness, kicked Amara's leg. The sound of it, sharp against the silence, was met with gasps, with murmurs of "Did she just?" and with phones now fully raised to capture the scene. Amara froze, not from the pain of the kick but from the crushing humiliation of being treated like less than human. Claire, for a moment, looked smug, as if she had won. But she hadn't. She had just started a war she could never finish. Because what no one on that plane knew was that within minutes, Amara would tell her father. And Richard Caldwell was not a man who allowed anyone to hurt his family without consequence. And his revenge would not come in whispers, it would come in billions. Asterisk. Richard Caldwell was in his Manhattan office reviewing market reports when his phone rang. And though he answered casually at first, the tremor in his daughter's voice instantly froze his world. As Amara described the humiliation she had endured, the dismissive service, the insult about people like you, and finally the kick that silenced the entire plane, Richard's silence on the other end became heavier than thunder, his jaw tightening until his hand nearly crushed the glass of water beside him. And when she finished, when she whispered that passengers had recorded everything and the whole cabin had gasped in disbelief, Richard's reply was calm yet deadly. "Don't worry, sweetheart. I'll handle it." He hung up, opened his secure trading app, and in less than 3 minutes ordered his financial team to freeze every cent connected to Global Air, a move that instantly locked over $800 million in investments, grounding the airline's liquidity and shocking Wall Street into chaos. Funds meant for aircraft leases, employee payrolls, and fuel contracts vanished into cold storage as if someone had pulled the plug on their empire. Back on the flight, Claire still smirked, oblivious to the fact that her name was now trending worldwide. Her actions recorded from 3 angles and live-streamed by a passenger whose video was already hitting millions of views, while Amara sat quietly, her dignity intact despite the humiliation, her composure only deepening the passenger's sympathy. In the Billionaire headquarters, alarms rang as panicked executives tried to understand why their stock had plummeted double digits within the hour. And when the CFO shouted, "It's Richard Caldwell, he's pulling everything," a silence dropped, so heavy it suffocated the boardroom. They knew his reach, they knew his power, and now they knew this was personal. Lawyers scrambled to draft statements blaming Amara for being disruptive. PR managers whispered about damage control, but their attempts collapsed the moment news anchors aired the viral video side by side with Richard's financial freeze, painting the incident as not just racism in the sky, but a corporate earthquake. Claire's arrogance had started it, but Richard's retaliation turned it into a global headline, an airline empire shaken in 5 minutes by a father's fury. Inside Billionaire's glass headquarters, panic ruled as executives shouted over each other, some demanding the immediate suspension of Claire to calm the storm, while others plotted a desperate counterattack to smear Amara's image. But every plan they touched seemed cursed from the start. Private investigators searched for dirt on her background, only to uncover spotless records of charity, humanitarian work, and academic excellence, while PR teams floated stories of her being a spoiled, rich girl, only for the internet to erupt with eyewitness accounts of her calm dignity during the entire flight. Passengers coming forward in droves with footage that showed Claire's insults and the shocking moment of the kick, and as the smear collapsed, Richard Caldwell struck again, releasing through anonymous whistleblowers internal files from Bilionaire's own servers that exposed a culture of discrimination, ignored safety violations, and even evidence of bribery to regulators, turning a PR nightmare into a legal inferno. Governments in both the United States and the United Kingdom demanded investigations. Stockholders fled like ants from fire, and in less than 72 hours, the airline once considered untouchable was now synonymous with racism and corruption, with employees leaking even more secrets just to save themselves, while Claire, once arrogant, now found herself hounded by cameras and forced into hiding, the entire internet branding her the face of cruelty in the sky. Within days the downfall was complete. Bilionaire's stock price gutted by more than 60%, its executives resigning in waves, and its aircraft grounded under emergency regulatory orders sparked by Richard Caldwell's strategic leaks, while lawyers lined up to file lawsuits from passengers, employees, and even governments, each case peeling back another layer of rot that proved the airline's corruption stretched far beyond a single act of cruelty in the sky. As journalists dug deeper, they found evidence of discriminatory hiring practices, falsified maintenance reports, and a pattern of silencing minority employees who had complained for years. And suddenly the world realized that Claire's kick was not just an isolated insult, but the visible scar of a much larger wound. Employees who once feared retaliation now stepped into the spotlight, their testimonies broadcast live as they described being harassed, underpaid, and forced into silence, their voices creating a tidal wave that no PR campaign could fight. And in the center of it all stood Amara, the young woman who had once sat quietly in her business class seat, hoping only for a smooth journey, now transformed into a global figure for dignity, her poised interviews resonating with millions as she declared that justice should never depend on wealth or power, but on truth and humanity. Around her, a movement ignited. Activists in London staged protests outside Heathrow. Passengers in New York picketed airline offices, and social media trended daily with hashtags demanding reform in the skies. each message amplifying the idea that travel should be safe and equal for all. Richard Caldwell, though known for his ruthless business tactics, surprised the world by redirecting the frozen $800 million not back into his empire, but into a foundation dedicated to racial justice, airline safety, and education for underprivileged youth, a move that turned his fury into a legacy and silenced critics who thought his actions were only revenge. His decision inspired other billionaires to pledge funds, creating an unexpected ripple of reform from boardrooms to classrooms. As for Claire, she became a cautionary tale, her career erased, her apologies drowned by the weight of what she had done. And though she vanished from the public eye, her name remained etched in headlines as the face of arrogance that destroyed an empire. Within a year, Global Air ceased operations entirely, its fleet sold off to competitors, its brand erased from airports, and its logo torn down from terminals. A ghost of a company undone by a single moment of unchecked prejudice. Yet the story did not end in ruins, it ended in rebirth. Because from the ashes of an airline came a worldwide reckoning, and Amara's voice, once trembling on a plane, now echoed in courtrooms, boardrooms, and parliaments as a reminder that respect is not optional, equality is not negotiable, and power, when wielded with justice, can turn even pain into progress. And so history remembered the scandal not just as the day a flight attendant kicked a millionaire's daughter, but as the day arrogance met accountability and the skies themselves were forced to change.